Welcome to The Detail. I'm your host, Cathy Antunes, and you are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida. And I will be posting this on YouTube. My guest today is the former mayor, former city commissioner of Sarasota, the city of Sarasota, the Honorable Mollie Cardamone. And we recently I was serving on the City Charter Review Board, and I know your input as somebody who has served the city as a commissioner and mayor was highly valued by the members there. Mollie, you have lived in Sarasota. I'm going to ask you how long you've lived here, but you have run a business here, you've raised a family here, and you really know a lot about the inner workings of City Hall. So thank you for joining me. How long have you lived here, Mollie?
My family moved here in 1945 when the county was like 20,000 people, let
Wow.
alone the city, how tiny it was.
So our county is now over 400,000 people, and the city is between 55
55.
60,000 people. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I know I moved here because the combination, I grew up in New York, right outside of a big city, and I was born in New York City and raised in Westchester County. Um, I was so charmed that there was an airport where I could get a direct flight to New York. There was opera and ballet, and there is opera and ballet and museums, and yet everybody seemed to know each other. It had kind of a small town vibe, but fabulous amenities. And
yes.
that has been a real, and of course, the amazing beaches and wildlife. You were part of creating that. You were part of the people who created it. And one of the reasons so many people want to live here. So thank you for that. And
Sure.
yeah, and I know we want to keep that, right? Um,
We sure do. We certainly are worrying about our future.
mhm. So the reason I asked you to join me today, to kick off this new year, to talk about you had an op-ed published in the Sarasota Herald Tribune. It was the day after Christmas, and I'm going to read the beginning of it. We'll start there. A recent email exchange between Sarasota City Manager Marlon Brown and City Attorney Robert Fournier exposed some of the dynamics that have resulted in the public and the public interest being locked out of the policy making process. At a December 7th workshop on the topic of bars and nightclubs, it was revealed that Fournier, Mr. Fournier, the city attorney, had not been brought into the process of drafting the language proposed by planning staff. It also became clear that Bob Fournier had material concerns about the legal implications of how the planning staff was approaching the issue. And this is changes to rules about bars and restaurants. Then you write, but on December 8th, Fournier wrote that he decided not to offer substantive comments on the staff's presentation because he knew from past experience that it might, quote, engender a strong negative reaction from planning staff and might result in an argument I had no interest in having, unquote. Sadly, this closely resembles the daily experiences of many Sarasota citizens. Too often, the city's planning staff holds one-way conversations with residents and neighborhood organizations in our community. Um, I have to say your op-ed generated a lot of commentary and interest on social media. Um, so you're just basically became aware of the situation through an email exchange on the city website. Is that right?
the email exchange is what caused me to write this letter. I've been very aware for a number of years of some of the things that are foreign to me in the behavior of administration and planning staff, very different from when I served in office. So I've kind of followed that. I've been to CCNA meetings, and of course, I'm a part of City PAC, which is very concerned about the city and the level of city commissioners that get elected. And so it the two letters just really triggered me. Would you read the second letter, which is Marlon Brown's response?
Sure. So this is further um, on December 11th. So
Mhm.
right, Brown, which is Marlon Brown, the city manager, revealed the true depth of the staff's general truculence when he wrote the following to Bob Fournier. Quote, what you and I discussed at lunch was staff being wedded to their positions on zoning text amendments and not willing to move. I talked to them about that all the time.
So that letter was an acknowledgement of the fact that the planning staff is not listening to him, or he's not directing them. Either way, it's still a problem.
Mhm.
Uh, I just don't understand why we have some of these zoning text amendments that we're dealing with now. I want to know who directed the writing of some of them,
Mhm.
why they are written. There's a couple of examples that I can give you if you would like, questions that I've been asking.
Yeah. So the big picture is we have, and we're going to get into these changes,
Mhm.
proposed changes, but we've got some pretty major proposed changes to
Mhm.
the standards regulating bars and restaurants downtown. That's number one. Number two, the city attorney, based on his own communication with the city manager, did not write these laws. He
Or
wasn't,
approve them.
he did. So we're paying a city attorney, the taxpayers, the residents are paying our city attorney to do exactly that, to review laws and write laws and make sure that they make sense. And it appears that in order to avoid backlash based on what Bob Fournier wrote to the city manager, he's stepping back because apparently the city staff raises such a fuss. Um, he said it was an argument he wasn't interested in having. And the city manager's like, yeah, I know. I talked to them about that all the time, which I read to mean I'm accepting this and I can't do anything about it. In other words, is what the city manager seems to be saying when the bottom line is they work for him. He
Well,
absolutely can tell them what to do.
yes.
Yeah,
Actually, the entire staff and administration work for the city commission. And if they're not directing Marlon Brown to do what their bidding is, and he doesn't translate that to staff, then we end up with exactly what we have now. Like, who directed staff to change the zoning code to allow bars and churches to be next door to each other? Where did that come from? That's just one of the strange things that are being presented to our commission. I'm like, really? That's just so odd. Who started that? Why?
yeah. But I call it the tail is wagging the dog.
A big tail, yes.
You have a city staff who appears to feel empowered to write law without consulting with the city attorney. The city attorney saying he knows his input is going to generate backlash, and the city manager saying, yeah, it's a problem. I keep talking to them about it. Like I can't do anything. Um, So, anyone, maybe you've never heard this show before, maybe you're unfamiliar with local politics. A lot of what we talk about here is related to land use and development. And one of the most important functions of a local government, and also the way that fortunes can be made, are land use decisions, real estate decisions. It is local government's job to uphold standards, to ensure the quiet enjoyment and livability of neighborhoods, to ensure a prosperous business environment. And in Florida, we seem to have a lot of problems with undue influence, dark money impacting local elections. It's often tied to development interests. So, Mollie, I want to get into the specifics. If I wanted to move to downtown Fort Lauderdale to be part of a spring break bar scene, I could have done that back in 99. I could have chosen to live on the East Coast and to have an amazing, bar
Sure.
scene with wet t-shirt content, all that stuff, right? I didn't want that. I think most people in Sarasota are not interested in that. Not that there's anything wrong with that if that's what you want, but that's not what most people want. And I know that the way we keep things livable is we have rules. So let's dive into because you have a letter that is going to be published. We're recording this on the Wednesday of January 10th. So you have a letter coming out in the Observer, which gets very specific about these proposed changes that appear to have just popped up out of nowhere from staff, have had no process that the public's been able to witness, no commission deliberation, and they're significant. So can we walk through what they are?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. In this letter that I presume will be published tomorrow in the Observer, I have asked the following questions, and I am concerned that I'm not going to get answers, but maybe.
Mhm.
First question is, who asked the planning department to write the zoning text amendments so antithetical to downtown livability? And I'll move off of that for a second and say, when I was on the commission and started on the commission, downtown was dead. There was hardly a viable business on Main Street. That's
Mhm.
1993. In the 8 years that I was in office, we really turned it all around. We started seeing a lot of viability in businesses, a lot of interest in living downtown. And I remember standing at the balcony of the Hyatt House and looking south. It was Jane Robinson, planning director at the time, and we're saying, this is just gorgeous. Look at what's happening along here with some of the condos that were under construction, and the Ritz that did come to Sarasota, which we, of course, were told it would never happen. We were
Mm.
thinking at the time, she said, I believe that we'll see a time when a third or more of our city residents will live downtown. Won't that be fabulous? And I think we're seeing that. We've
Yeah.
encouraged the living, we've encouraged the condos. We like people downtown. It makes a wonderful downtown. But what
Mhm.
has happened is the proliferation of bars changed the idea that originally we would have a village type downtown. I
Mhm.
kind of liken it to Winter Park over near Orlando. We would have
Right.
restaurants. We would
Yeah.
have bars, we would have galleries, we would have shops, we would have a quiet tree shaded when we planted all those trees and stuff. So we had an idea and we hired Dwani to help us develop our downtown with a
Is
plan.
Andres Duani, who is like
The
the
guru
new
of
urbanism, right?
yeah,
Andres
new urbanism.
Duani, I love this story. He basically measured Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes,
He
yes,
he took the measurements and all of the ways that it had developed, and he developed Seaside, which in the movie, if you've seen the Truman Show, that's Seaside. It exceeded everybody's expectations in terms of popularity and value. But basically, what he says is, we don't build this way anymore. We build around cars instead of around walkability and the needs of people. So the city of Sarasota was very prescient. You saw the trend, you saw what was coming, and hired really the expert to bring in some planning standards so we could have that, right?
right,
We could
right.
replicate like a Charleston, South Carolina environment.
Well, what has happened? Our downtown has become a regional playground for a lot of young adults, kids, especially
Mhm.
after 9 o'clock at night. So our main street has morphed into something that we never wanted it to be, never thought it would be. And now it's affecting all the residents that we encouraged to come downtown, the
Mhm.
development that we approved. So somehow or other, we've gotten at cross purposes. And we do
Mhm.
need to turn it around. And one of the ways we can turn it around is by our zoning text amendments and changes to the zoning. I read a letter from a downtown Sarasota condo association fellow, and he said a restaurant is a restaurant and serves food and drink to people from their own kitchen, inside or outside. A bar is a bar that serves drinks.
Mhm.
All this other fluff just deviates in every direction as to the definition of what a bar is and what a restaurant is, which is really odd. But
Yeah.
I'll go back and add a couple of things that
Well,
are being
let me
presented.
stop you because I don't want people
Sure.
to get turned off by the jargon. A zoning
Okay.
text amendment, zoning are
Yes.
basically
Of
the
course.
rules, right? You
Yes.
know, how you can build and how you can operate
Right.
uh commercially or even in a residential neighborhood. You know, a lot of it might be about when you put your garbage out. They're the rules around development. Um, Zoning text amendments exist so that you don't have to rewrite everything. You don't have to start over. You can simply write an appropriate amendment to make, you know, a specific change. You take a scalpel and you get real specific and you make a change. And it doesn't have to be, it can be an option. We have a zoning options in my neighborhood, you know,
Mhm.
well, it's an overlay district, but it's for smaller lots. So there are ways that these amendments are intended to tweak things when they need to be tweaked, right?
Yep. These are some mighty big tweaks.
Yeah, these are
So,
mighty big tweaks and they actually can totally change the nature. And the other thing is, I mean, speaking for myself, I think it's fine to have a, you know, nighttime entertainment scene. You know, people enjoy that, but there has to be harmony with everything around it. It can't take over. And a lot of times when things get out of balance and there is no harmony is when neighborhoods go south. You need the residents to be customers for the businesses and you know, you don't want to hollow out a downtown because it becomes unlivable, uh, and yet, you know, have it be the playground for people who don't live there.
correct. And and I believe that's what is happening. So as the planning staff has been writing these different amendments to already existing zoning, I thought, where did this direction come from? It could easily be done in a workshop where the planning staff meets with the commission in a workshop and says, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What would you think if we wrote a text amendment that allowed bars to be next to churches? Instead, there's no direction from the commission to do this. So they write what they think is proper, maybe from a professional point of view, which of course they are very professional and have a fabulous planning background. But somehow or other, there's a disconnect in what the city residents expect or want and what's being proposed.
Mhm.
Um,
So
one of
one of the
these,
proposals is shortening the distance between churches and bars, which I always understood had to be like 500 feet, but now it's
it's
less.
called removing the distance between churches and bars.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Right.
getting rid of it.
Uh,
Okay.
the noise ordinance that has been an issue since I was in office, coming out of office in 2001, has been a huge problem. And the more we have people living downtown and the more users of downtown at night, the more noise problems we have. That noise ordinance it has been requested by the residents of the city for years, and it has
Hmm.
not been written yet. It hasn't been determined how to write it. It should have been done way before these zoning tax amendments but where's that? That's just a very, very big problem that downtown residents and some of us with neighborhoods close to downtown are experiencing. So
Hmm.
noise is huge. The actual police efforts that are taking place in our downtown, the police calls, the emergencies, the fact that in our town we've had several gunshot incidents on Main Street at night.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
just so strange, so unusual for those of us who have been in this city a long, long time.
Yeah,
Um, I am concerned that the commission has not had the ability to direct some of the things and changes that they would like. And I'm not quite sure why. I think the city manager really must grab hold of this and work with the commission on what they want, and then let the planning staff write it as so it's acceptable to codes.
yeah. Um, so I just want to read, you have these questions. I'm just for the sake of kind of making sure we wrap our arms around all these changes. I just want to read them. You asked 7 questions because you've seen that these are being proposed and we don't know where they've come from. These proposals have come from. In Florida, we're supposed to be able to see the deliberative process. It's not supposed to come fully formed from staff without any prompting from the city commission, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. And who's prompting these changes? Is it, attorneys for developers or, who's prompting it? So these are the questions you ask. Who asked the planning department to write zoning text amendments so antithetical to downtown livability? Who suggested removing the distance between churches and bars? Who said kitchens and public health inspections were not important to restaurants? That's a big one I want to come back to. When downtown crime statistics show a pattern related to bar closings, I would think the later the bars close, the more crime. Is that what you mean?
More activity, yes.
More problems.
Criminal activity or
Yeah.
undesirable activity.
On what basis does staff assert that restaurants and bars have the same impact on their surroundings? So in other words, the restaurant closing late isn't creating police activity with the way the bars closing late do.
Sure.
Who told the city attorney not to advance clarification of the sound ordinance? Who said the existing plainly audible at 50-foot noise ordinances should not be enforced? Why are the rules not being enforced to control impacts on shared environments of outdoor bars and nightclub events? So it's all basically getting to what kind of a downtown do we want to have? And I'll share, Molly, with you. There's a restaurant. We love to go downtown for dinner, and we have a bunch of places we go to, but one of them is across, and it's a quieter restaurant, and it's directly across the street from a place that has live music. And they're not really supposed to. Well, first of all, this place violates the noise ordinance ridiculously. I mean, I actually was measuring decibels outside. It was ridiculous. And they violate it constantly. And it's the reason you need a government. It's very hard for the restaurant owner across the street. They don't want to be fighting with their neighbor, you know. They would
Yeah.
really much rather that the city did its job, you know, and enforce the noise ordinance, but it's not happening, and it's impacting their ability to serve their patrons. I mean, the owner told me, we've had customers tell us we'd love to come here, but we don't because we can't hear each other talk because of the noise coming from across the street. So, can we take a step back? Because this didn't used to be an issue at all. And there's been a change with the city commission in recent years in terms of their values. Would you say that's fair?
I would say that's absolutely a fair statement.
Yeah.
The
Um, Go ahead.
the changes that we've seen in our commission are responsible for the changes that we've seen downtown, solely responsible.
Mhm.
beginning with Hagan Brody and Commissioner Arroyo and Commissioner Batty, all have a different bend on what our downtown should be and seem to be very tuned in to bar owners, restaurant owners, developers. That was not the case years ago. Our My commission and those following me always had the sense that the residents of the city own this city. We're the
Mhm.
taxpayers. We do the work. We carry the load. We support the venues that are shared by the region, Van Waysel, Bobby Jones, those kinds of places that City of Sarasota sponsors on the backs of the taxpayers of the city, the residents. So when we do anything that makes the residents uncomfortable or refusing to go downtown, which some of my friends do. I don't want to go down there. It's too busy. It's too loud. It's too noisy. I just don't feel good on Main Street, especially when it gets dark or after dark. That's just terrible to think about.
Yeah,
Your story is very, very typical of the stories that I hear.
yeah.
My husband and I look for quieter places to go out and enjoy ourselves. We like the
Mhm.
music, but not in our ear where we have to yell at each other for pity's sake.
Yeah,
So I think the residents that have moved downtown have a real beef with how our downtown is now operating.
yeah,
Certainly, those of in the neighborhoods outside of downtown want to enjoy the downtown that we work so hard to produce. It
yes.
changed with the fact that we had a big commission change. So City PAC is listening to the residents, has a lot of friends in our organization and supporters, and our goal is to elect city commissioners that will listen to the residents and the voters of the city.
So
Simple.
everybody, if you're just joining us, my guest is Mollie Cardamone. She is the former mayor and city commissioner in the city of Sarasota. We are talking about downtown livability and what's going on in City Hall with proposed changes to downtown zoning. Programming at WSLR is supported by listeners like you and by Ringling College Galleries and Exhibitions. Ringling College's 2023-24 exhibition season features art from Ringling students, alumni, faculty, and nationally recognized artists from a wide range of mediums and from diverse backgrounds. More information is available at ringlingcollege.gallery. And Mollie, you had mentioned City PAC, that you are a member of City PAC, and I want to talk about, what that organization is and why it formed. Um, but before we get there, I think the most alarming thing to me in reading your letters and your references to the email exchanges between the city attorney and city manager is I find it shocking and disturbing when you have a city attorney who is not writing ordinances, but instead non-attorneys, planning staff are taking that on themselves, and they don't want, according to the city attorney, and it was actually verified, in his email exchange with the city manager. The city staff is pushing back on the advice of the city attorney to the point where the city attorney doesn't feel welcome to offer advice anymore.
Crazy.
Yeah, this is this is
In the first place, that is a charter violation. If you'll read the charter, one of the duties of the city attorney is to write or at least seriously review an ordinance and most likely write it in his own legal way. That's
Mhm.
not happening. And of course, the planning department and planning staff work for the city manager,
Right.
and he's obviously in his the whole my whole letter was caused by him saying that in an email exchange that he talks to the staff all the time about being entrenched in an idea and not being willing to move, and
Yeah.
they don't move. So where's the dynamics? Where's the problem there?
So I have what I think any reasonable person who looks at local politics or who just understands politics is, a lot of times people just want deniability, right? Oh, I didn't have anything to do with that. Oh, I don't understand. To avoid accountability and responsibility, when in fact they are part of an intention to find a way to skirt the rules to get done whatever it is they want to get done, or those who have their ear, those who have a seat at the table. And I think this, so, you know, the interests of whoever it is who wants the rules to change. I'm reminded of, come back to this, I find this popping up a lot, going back to this mayor's ball that happened in the fall of 2022, using the name of the mayor, a foundation that was using the city name, using the city address, started by then Mayor Arroyo, not registered to take donations. I mean, all kinds of rule breaking. City staff was some city staff were at that event. They didn't invite me.
I didn't.
Right?
No, I didn't get invited.
I didn't get invited. And I think it was $200 a ticket to go. Like
Cash.
the city
It was
staff.
$200 cash.
Okay, but see, the city manager was there. Did he, I'm just like, this is so ridiculous to have this event. It was held at a private club, but one of the sponsors, or appeared to be a sponsor because their banners were there, was a cigar club downtown that is one of the institutions that wants the rules to change because they want sidewalk seating so their patrons can smoke cigars. And that's only supposed to be for restaurants, it's not for outdoor smoking.
It happened.
And so, I just look at this and say, oh yeah, you talk to them about it all the time. You're in charge. You're going to this event. And I like Marlon, I always like to say, everyone's a nice guy. Everyone's a nice guy. This is just about how is city business being conducted. And again, getting back to the tail wagging the dog, I've got a neighbor who spent a career cutting cancerous lesions out of lungs, writing to the city saying, you should not be approving cigar bars outside. People don't have a choice about secondhand smoke, and it does kill. So having said that, I mean, I know people you probably prefer not to go there, but I have to. It's like, look, putting lipstick on something bad, or corrupting the process, a corruption of the process by saying, gee, I talked to them about it. There's nothing I can do. Are you kidding? Come on. This is our city. And so one more question before we get to your work with CityPack. What is this not requiring public health inspections for restaurants?
I don't have an answer to that. It's just what I read, what I hear. I can't believe that's actually the way it is, but
I don't think they can do that legally, but yeah.
If you can define the word restaurant differently, probably you could.
Okay. So, what I'm getting at with the cigar bar having tables outside is a restaurant, as you said early in the show, has a kitchen that it serves food out of. But if you want to allow a cigar bar to have tables outside, you modify the definition of a restaurant. So if you're giving out goldfish and peanuts, that's food, and that's makes right. That's essentially the kind of thing they're wanting to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what they believe they are doing, or they're ordering food from another restaurant and serving it. They don't have a kitchen, in other words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
the definitions of kitchens and bars is very, very important. And I think anyone listening to the show could probably write down a couple lines on what a restaurant is, a couple lines on what a bar is. does
Yeah,
not
we all know
require
the
this
difference.
huge effort. Right,
Yeah, we
right.
all know the difference. So obviously, there have been people who've maybe invested their life savings to buy a place downtown, right? They're not missing any meals. These are wealthy people, but, after a lifetime of hard work, maybe this is their main investment, and they came here with an expectation of a certain quality of life. I think I'd say it was maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, um, that I know I hosted a town hall about downtown noise and livability, where a lot of the residents were talking with, I think Liz Albert was graciously came on and was talking with residents about that. But that morphed into something more, didn't it?
Obviously, it did. It went
Yeah.
way beyond noise, and yet noise has been eliminated from discussion. Go
So
figure that.
that was kind of the impetus for this city pack group that you are part of.
Yes, originally it was a group of downtown people who sort of reached out into the neighborhoods and asked a couple of us to become involved. But today's thrust of City PEC is to elect commissioners that will listen to the residents.
Mm.
And we have made we've found the Sadowski Code of Public Service, and we're touting that and following that. And we're asking city commissioners who may not have ever heard of the word public service or understand what public service is to
Mm.
buy into this creed. Cathy, you could have a whole show on the Sadowski Creed. Um, Many people think that public service is actually sweeping the streets and monitoring various events, being part of a policeman, that kind of thing. Public service is a lot more than that. So when we elect a public official, we now have elected somebody to provide service to the entire community. And that is missing in some of the commissioners that we've elected.
Mm.
We
How
have
how
elect
so? How would you?
well, we've elected city commissioners who, immediately upon election, I had a coffee with him, and he said, I was so surprised when I saw that great big book of the agenda for the first meeting I was going to. And I said, you didn't know about the agenda book and all the backup material? No. And I'm like, why did you even run for this office if you had no knowledge of how it operates, let
Mm.
alone have a background in attending meetings, being on advisory boards, sort of getting into the bowels of the city
Mhm.
versus just saying, hey, I want to run for office. There's a city commission open, or somebody walks along and says, why don't you run for commission? Sure, I will do that, and
Mhm.
then get elected. So the substance of City PAC right now is we have got to elect people that understand what public service is, which is the Sadowski Creed of public service, and having been involved in city issues. So it's going to be a big job, but
Mhm.
we're going to treat it as applying for a job, and we will
So,
endorse candidates.
yeah. Okay. So who is Sadowski, and how did this
He was
come about?
he was a very young, very bright state congressman, yeah, state of Florida congressman, or state house, I guess you would call it, who was just really smart and well thought of, and was killed very young in a plane accident.
Mm.
Meanwhile, he had produced this creed for public service. What prompted him to do that, I do not know. But
Mm.
when the day I was elected to office, a friend gave me this creed, and she said, this is the way you're supposed to operate now that you're an elected city commissioner. And I thought, wow. And I read it. And honestly, it taught me a couple things that I did follow. One was not announce my position or my vote on something until I heard all of the public comment. You might know what I would vote if it was a neighborhood issue, but I had to listen, or I should listen to everybody. And there were times when public would come forward with things I didn't know or were not in the backup material. And it was
Mhm.
like, well, I came in thinking I would vote this way after reading the material, but hearing
Mhm.
the public, I'm with them. So those are the things, the Sadowski Code. Another one is if you make a decision, you make a position, you tell your people and you learn things that change that, then you have a compelling reason to tell your public why you changed your position. So one of the things that really bothers me at our city commission level now is commissioners will vote on something but not say why they voted on it.
That
And I'm
happens
like,
all
I
the
want to,
time.
yeah, all the time. I want to know. I hear the back and forth and the questions, and you kind of get a feeling of it. But I want to know specifically why you are voted, why you did vote, or why you are going to vote for this. Makes a big difference for the listening public.
Well, and
This
your first point,
vote,
Molly, just to
right?
jump in real quick, your first
Sure.
point, I know so many people who get so disheartened and cynical when they start paying attention to local government because they see, and I believe they're correct a lot of the time, that the outcome is preordained and that they feel so disrespected when they give. First of all, a lot of them are nervous to give public input. I know I was the first time I went to share how I felt about something. And to do that, to be nervous, and yet, these folks work for you, but then to be ignored, even no eye contact, no, I've seen people actually kind of smirking, when
Yeah,
people are giving public comment,
absolutely.
very, very disrespectful. The first point, boy, if you could just feel that your public officials were truly open-minded, and so often that's not the case. So, I just, that first point really resonates in the 15 years I've been watching. But anyway, I know there's more. What were the others? I interrupted you. Tell me
Um,
what the others were.
well, one that I liked a lot is even a scoundrel has good ideas.
That is true.
That is very true. And sometimes somebody has to tell you that because you
Yes.
look at this scoundrel coming forward and you think, oh, not him again or not her again. And then you think,
Mhm,
wow, what they just said, that was a good idea. So
mhm, mhm,
that I thought was a very clever part uh, of his creed for public service. But some of the ones that don't question people's motives or motivations.
mhm,
Listen to what they have to say. Always respect another person's right to hold their own views, just as you want them to respect your point of view. And I'm
mhm,
sort of paraphrasing some of these. Once you take a position, don't change it unless there is a compelling reason. And if that compelling reason comes on, explain why you changed your
mhm,
position.
mhm.
The legislature or the commissioners make its worst decision when it has ignored the benefits of effective and competing advocacy. So true. I see that at Sarasota County.
Oh, yeah.
80 people go and present a really compassionate, good reason or solid reason why that development out east should not take place. 3 people speak up for it, and
Mhm,
you just sit there and you know where the county commission is going to vote.
mhm.
It's going to vote with those 3 people.
Yeah. Well, I think
Who owns this
citizens,
county? Who owns this city? But the residents, the people that are affected by the decisions.
yeah, Citizens United, I think was, people talk about it making change at a national level, but I'll tell you, here in Sarasota County, Citizens United had an almost immediate impact on our local elections. And I think you can trace this attitude shift back to that time, about
Sure.
2010. The other thing we're
Yeah.
seeing now is Ron DeSantis, his administration and the state legislature abrogated city and county charter campaign finance rules. And so now in the city of Sarasota, corporations could not donate to campaigns. It had to be an actual human being. That is no longer true. There are no longer limits. I think it was a $200 limit in the county and the city. Those are gone. I think it's 500 an individual or 1,000.
1,000.
So, we don't want to bought government in theory, right? The people, the founders of this country, it wasn't he who has the gold makes the rules, But with Citizens United and the campaign finance changes under the DeSantis administration, we have a very different playing field.
Well, the cities that were incorporated with a charter, like the city of Sarasota, and not all cities in the state are chartered cities. We
Mhm.
always enjoyed home rule. So we could follow the state rules that were handed down, but we could exceed those rules.
Right.
And that's gone under this current governorship. That's all gone and lost, which is kind of like too bad because we think we're special in Sarasota and we think we can handle things like trees and that kind of stuff
Mm.
so easily because it's ours. But that's all been handed down and changed, and that's very, very unfortunate. That state, it's sort of in the same thing in the school system.
Yeah, it's going to
State
take,
mandates.
I don't think these things long term will stand,
I
but
hope not.
clawing our way back to home rule is going to take some doing. In
Well,
Florida, it's really been trashed.
unfortunately, you're right.
Yeah.
Back to the city, I believe that we can elect some new commissioners that will become more concerned about the residents and the needs of the neighborhoods, that we can go back and change some of the current ordinances that have affected us adversely.
Hmm.
I think that we can do some things downtown that may be in effect today, but there's no reason that a city can't put a limit on the number of bars in a certain block.
Well, actually, there's a lot of planning literature which supports that you need an appropriate mix of retail and um, restaurants. That if you have too much of one and not enough of the other,
Balance, yeah.
you wind up becoming um, you wind up having difficulty,
And we're
because
seeing that difficulty now.
yeah, well, I think we are in a place, I hope you would agree. I think we're in a place where we can pull this back. But if we
I hope so.
don't, we could wind up in trouble. And it certainly appears to be heading in that direction. Yeah. So,
Well,
Molly,
I would just say the questions are who causes this, and then the next question is why. So we can answer those two, who and why. Maybe we can get back on a track that gives us the downtown that we envisioned, not just my
no one's
commission years
saying,
ago, but now.
yeah, no one's saying no bars or restaurants. Obviously not.
Not at all. Not
Yeah.
at all. But
So,
fights and drinking and public drunkenness and gunshots and things like that are not anything that we should agree to handle. Just should
yeah,
not.
yeah. So tell us about City PAC. So this is a political action committee,
Mhm.
right? But
Yes.
it actually is a committee. I mean, or a group of people, because a lot of these political action committees are shell organizations to plant money, and then, they have great sounding names, but the reality is it's, the puppet masters with deep pockets or corporations, along with corporations, putting money in a pot and trying to buy elections. This is resident driven.
Yes, definitely resident driven, and it is. We have a steering committee,
Hmm.
7 people, I think, who are very concerned about what's happening. We have an advisory board of about 30 citizens whose names most everybody that follows city politics and city interests and CCNA will recognize names. And they are sort of our advisory group, our backup group for comment and advice. And the goal, as I said before, is to elect city commissioners that have the ears to listen to the public.
Hmm.
So it'll be done through a job application type, and we will interview, as other organizations also interview candidates, and we will endorse someone that we think fits the Sadowski code, understands that, and
Hmm.
uh, the interest of our residents, our neighborhoods in mind.
Hmm.
And I think we can do that. I expect us to be very successful as we move along. You're right, we are a very legal pack. We can't spend we can't give a candidate money, that kind of thing, but we can
Mhm.
help with signage or with endorsements.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I have been at a city PAC meeting or two to offer my input, and there's going to be a upcoming debate in
Yes,
March that I will be chairing.
sure.
WSLR has sponsored town halls at the request of city PAC, so it's my experience that it's very resident oriented. Um,
Yes.
which I think is needed in politics.
I,
And
I believe I believe our big town hall with candidates will be, it's actually a candidate program on the 28th of March in the library downtown. I think I've got that right. I'm
that's what
sorry I didn't look that up.
that's okay. Kelly
Okay.
Franklin's going to make sure everybody knows when she's
Yes,
she's my
right. We will advertise it.
yeah.
We will hope to have a good turnout.
Yeah, there'll be announcements for that. So Molly, how would you like to see this change, assuming the Sadowski Code of Public Service here? And I did it a little bit, I mean, but in terms of wondering about motives and who's behind things. But you've raised some important, legitimate concerns. What would you like to see um, city staff do to respond to these concerns, to do things differently?
I'd like to see workshops done with the commission so the commission has some input as to what codes are changed or rewritten. I think the commission is really left out of this process. I know there's a reluctance on the part of some commissioners to have workshops, but basically that's their job to
Mhm.
talk among themselves, to hear each
In
other
public.
in public. Public is not allowed to speak at a workshop. I wish there were times when commission could hold round table discussions with the public, but right now that's not possible.
Yeah.
It's always possible, but it's not being done. So I just really want the recognition that the residents of the city of Sarasota are the owners of our city, and they really need to have input and be listened to.
All right. Well, on that note, Molly Cardamone, thank you so
You're welcome.
much.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for joining me today. Everybody, you have been listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida. Programming at WSLR is supported by listeners like you and by Ringling College Galleries and Exhibitions. Ringling College's 2023-24 exhibition season features art from Ringling students, alumni, faculty, and nationally recognized artists from a wide range of mediums and from diverse backgrounds. More information is available at ringlingcollege.gallery. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to stay tuned for more public affairs programming here on WSLR. Make it a great day.